Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode of the JBA On podcast, where we will be doing our wildcard weekend review. We'll be going over all 6 of the super wildcard weekend games, starting with the Colts at the Bills and finishing up with the Browns at the Steelers. So, like I said, starting off with the Colts at the Bills. For the Colts, my team, a bit of a tough loss there. A team I did not expect to beat. But I thought we could make it close, and we did make it close. But the problem is that I truly feel like we outplayed them. We had more time possession, more first downs, better third down efficiency, more yards, better fourth down efficiency. More this, more that. We just outplayed them pretty much every metric. The only ones we didn't. And the difference was red zone efficiency and goal to go efficiency. 1 for 2 on goal to go efficiency. And 2 for 5 on red zone efficiency, where they were 2 for 2 on both. That's where we really struggled there. We're the first team in NFL history to go for over 450 yards of total offense and have no turnovers, and also lose a playoff game. First team in NFL history to do that in a playoff game, and to do that, to reach those statistical barriers, but still lose. And so even though this was an L, I still feel like it showed that we're just that close to being a contender. We're a 33-yard field goal off the upright. Say that goes in, then it's overtime, or say we don't pitch it on 3rd and goal, and instead we go up the middle twice with our potential rookie. With our offensive rookie of the year nomination, Jonathan Taylor. If we do that twice or even just once, he could probably get it in. This is a dub for us. Or if Blankenship doesn't miss that 33-yard field goal, it's in overtime and we can win that. Just little mistakes here and there. We had 8 drops on 2nd down, which is kind of a cherry-picked stat, but just shows you how much we did end up dropping it. That's just 2nd down as well. And, a lot of plays where we drop on 2nd down and get us into a 3rd and long situation. Philip Rivers, he drops back on 2nd and 8, and he sees Jonathan Taylor sitting in the middle, 2 yards away from the first down. He throws it to him, hoping for Jonathan Taylor to either get to a 4th and short or get the first down, and then it's a drop or something like that. Same thing happened with, Taylor, Hines. Pittman had some drops. Pittman had a good game, though, as a rookie. I said that we need to get Pittman involved. And we did get him involved, and we played well because of that. But he did have some mistakes. But these guys are also rookies a lot, and I do think that there was a little bit of coaching gas in here. But overall, it just shows you that we're just really close. If we win this game, we beat a Super Bowl contender. And I don't know if Philip Rivers will be on the team next year. I don't think he will be. I'm not so sure. I can't really say anything for sure yet, and I'm hoping we can get somebody like Matthew Stafford, maybe Dak Prescott, maybe we draft someone, who knows. But just someone who is talented enough to bring us, hopefully, to that Super Bowl contention level, because I think we're just one piece away. Anthony Costanzo did just retire, though, but I think we'll be able to replace him somewhat easily. And if we just get someone that's somewhat mobile, we just need a quarterback with enough talent that will be able to do what Philip Rivers did, but also have that extra thing that Rivers didn't, which is that ability to improvise when the play breaks down, which Rivers did not have. So I think if we get someone like that, and also fill in some holes in maybe the receiving core and cornerback depth, I think the Colts can be a contender next year.
Yeah, for sure. The Colts had an amazing game. What a wild game that was, 24-27 victory for the Bills. But this shows us that the Bills could lose tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, I'm sorry. The Bills could lose next week, their next game. They're Super Bowl contenders, but no offense to the Colts. But the Bills are the 2nd to 3rd best team in the league. I thought the Colts were a dark horse team in the playoffs. But you would think that it'd be a 1-touchdown game. But this is a very close game, and the Bills really got bailed out. Sure, there was that one stupid fumble call where, it definitely was a fumble. That would have sealed the game, but that would have never happened if, Blankenship could have made that field goal, or if they could stop dropping the ball, or if Frank Reich made a little bit better decisions, because like you said, there was a little bit of coaching trouble there. I think people are getting ahead of themselves for the Colts. People want to fire Frank Reich. I think that's a little too far. But, I mean, Josh Allen had a good game as always, a pretty decent game. He had 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. One thing you don't want to see from this Bills team is that the rushing game is faltering. Aside from Josh Allen, the running backs had 42 yards combined. Josh Allen had 54 yards total rushing, which is one thing you don't want to see because this is a passing team. Obviously, you've got Stephon Diggs, who had a phenomenal season. He had a good game, 128 yards and 1 touchdown. And, Gabriel Davis had 85 yards, Cole Beasley 57. So the passing game is doing fine. It's just the rushing game. Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. Zach Moss just went out with an injury, I believe, and he could be out for the rest of the playoffs. Devin Singletary, he's got to step up. You can't have Josh Allen being your leading rusher every single game. This team needs a rushing game if they want to be an even more electrifying offense. And I think the defense needs to step up too. I mean, you allowed the Colts to score 24 points. I mean, they're a good Colts team, but you want to be winning every game in dominant fashion. But other than the defense and the rushing game, which I think they can bounce back on, I mean, this is a good Bills team. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in Josh Allen. Tyler Bass is automatic. I mean, the defense was playing solid throughout the season. I think there's just one falter in the game. And, the receiving core is phenomenal, especially with Stephon Diggs, who had a phenomenal season, like I said. But I think just the rushing game faltered this game. The defense faltered a little bit, and they did get bailed out. And, I mean, I think they're definitely the favorites going into the next game against the Ravens, but they could lose. I mean, the Ravens didn't have a bad game against the Titans. They were the underdogs going in my opinion, and ended up coming out with the win. So I think this Bills team needs to play like regular season Bills if they want to beat the Ravens here because Lamar is heating up. He had a little rough start to the season, but now he's getting better. So I think if the Bills can just play like regular season Bills, they'll be able to, go even farther. And it's going to be tough for them to, improve the running game, especially with that injury. But I think they can do it, and I think the Bills are going to be a scary team going farther into the playoffs.
Next up, we have the Rams at the Seahawks. The Rams took a 30-20 dub the city of LA. A game where Wolford ended up getting the start, but then he went out at the beginning of the game, and then Goff came in. And so, personally, I was wondering if Goff can play. It's if he can play or he can't. Unless he was actually benched because the coaching staff thought Wolford would be better, there was no reason to not have Goff starting if he could play in general. And he could play clearly since they put him in for the rest of the game. He didn't have a great game. He wasn't great. I mean, he didn't make that many mistakes. No picks. But he also had a below 50% completion percentage. I believe is the first quarterback to ever win a playoff game while having below 50% completion percentage. I think since Brady in 2018, I believe. But the Colts really just the Rams really just, dominated the running game. They had 164 yards rushing, and their defense was great. That they just kind of controlled the clock and just beat up on the Seahawks running and defensively. The passing game had an effect. Cooper Kupp had a pretty good game. Goff, he had a passing touchdown. But really, it was the running game and the defense that kind of won this game for the Rams, which is their strength of their team right now. When a few years ago, it was the other way around. It was the passing offense that was doing all the work and not really much of the defense running game. So, and we'll see. I think that the Rams, you can't sleep on them going into this game against the Packers because, the Packers' main strength is their offense. We all know that, especially Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. But Jalen Ramsey has been locking up receivers all year long. He's done against the Seahawks with DK Metcalf. He just kind of limits them. He didn't do that great of a job this game. I'm not sure. He might have been guarding Lockett, but I'm pretty sure he's guarding Metcalf. I mean, Metcalf had 5 receptions for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, but a lot of that came from that 151-yard bomb. So if you take that out, it's only 44 yards on 4 receptions, and he also had 11 targets too. So that means 6 of the 11 targets were incomplete. So I think Ramsey did a pretty good job to take away that one big pass. He did a very respectable job. He's been doing that all year. And while Devontae and him and Jair Alexander are the only 2 corners I think in the league right now that can do that. Jair Alexander, who plays for the Packers, who I believe has not had a receiver go for, almost anything on him all year long. He's locked him down every single week. I don't think there's been a receiver go for. I know for there hasn't been a receiver that went for over 100 on him. I think, except for Adam Thielen might have in week 1. Don't quote me on that. But I think it's going to be Matt. I think that JBA is going to be able to shut down whoever he wants to cover. Probably Cooper Kupp. I think Jalen Ramsey can shut down Devontae Adams. He'll still have production. He might have a touchdown. He might have like 70 yards. But won't have an insane game. But we know what Aaron Rodgers can do with he can just give it to whoever he can really just make it work with anybody. So I think you can't sleep on the Rams because they do have that defense that really shows up against amazing offenses. They've done it against the Seahawks 3 separate times this season, holding them to 20 points or less. They did the Buccaneers, that offense was only able to score 24 points on them. The Cardinals had a pretty good game on them in Week 13, but in Week 17 only had 7 points. We know they have a good offense. They have one of the best rushing offenses in the league. And Kyler Murray is obviously, very, very amazing. And they haven't had a team go for 30 or more on them since Week 3 against the Bills. So I think this defense could potentially shut down the Packers offense. But it is going to be a battle, I think, of whether or not the Rams defense shows up. And while it might be a snowy game, for these two teams, it might be a snowy game where, Packers are probably going to be used to that, so I give them a little bit of an advantage. But it also gives but I still think that the Rams could potentially show up with that amazing defense that they do
have. For the Seahawks, they let Russ cook, and he burned the food. Russ was an MVP candidate. He was the MVP favorite like the first few weeks of the season. He was cooking. He was making beautiful food. It was delicious. And now this game, in the past few games, Russell Wilson burnt the food. Russell Wilson has 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. You can't be throwing for 174 yards in a playoff game, especially against the Rams, who were struggling a little bit this season. They were 10-6, which is very respectable. That's a good record, but Seahawks were the favorites going in. You had Wolford in the beginning of the game before, there was a dirty hit by Blitz Boy. That's his nickname, but dirty hit by Jamal Adams. It was, I believe, shoulder to head, or it was helmet to helmet, and he was out in the hospital. Luckily, he was able to return back to the game. He wasn't back in the game, but he was there to celebrate with them, with the Rams after the victory. But Russell Wilson, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. That's not a good stat line, especially when you won 11 for 27 from passing. He was sacked 5 times in the game. And, this team really is a passing offense. You got DK Metcalf. He had 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. We've got Tyler Lockett. I think those two are an amazing pair. But the offense was just not great. Chris Carson had 77 yards, which is good. Russ had 50 yards rushing. But DK having 96 yards, Lockett having 43. DK was really the only one there in the passing game that was productive, 2 touchdowns. I don't think Jalen Ramsey was covering the entire game because on the season, and the 2 matchups in the regular season, I think a Ramsey held DK to around 30 or 40 yards, which is phenomenal. But DK did have a good game, but it wasn't enough. You lost by 10. Jared Goff didn't even play well. He had 155 yards and 1 touchdown. Jared Goff was just not good. It was Cam Akers the entire game carrying the team, and the defense was playing solid. But it's tough to see the Seahawks team go from so high in the beginning of the season to just so low right now. You got to feel for Russ, but I think we expected a breakdown from the Seahawks, but I didn't think Russ would be this bad, to be honest. Really nothing to say here. The defense faltered a little bit. Bobby Wagner is Bobby Wagner. He had 11 total tackles. There's really not much to say. They came in here, they were the favorites, and they lost by 10 to this Rams team. I'm not confident in this Rams team at all, so I don't think that the Seahawks should have lost the game this badly. 10 points isn't that much, but it's still 2 possessions, and especially Russ having, in my opinion, that's a bad game. Other people might say it's decent, but no, to me, that's a bad game. To have a game like that, especially in the first round of the playoffs against this Rams team that you were favored against, it's pretty rough to watch. Next season, DK's going to have a great season, but Russ has got to play like MVP Russ at the beginning of the season, or like he was at the beginning of the season, every single game. He can't falter. Chris Carson's got to step it up. If DK has another good season and the defense plays well, they're going to be back in the playoffs, but it's going to be tough because, especially going out like this in such a rough fashion, with poor performances on both sides of the ball, it's just sad to watch the Seahawks team falter this badly, even if you aren't a fan. But I mean, Rams got the win; they deserve to win. Rams, they're gonna have a very tough matchup against the Packers. I think the Packers are definitely favored here, but never cut the Rams out. But for the Seahawks, that's rough. And he lost to a good Rams team, and hopefully he'll be back next season.
Next, we have the Buccaneers at the Washington football team. So, the Buccaneers, you gotta win. You won in the playoffs. Wow. You were the wild card team too. You were an underdog. You were playing a 7-19. You were 11-5, and you had arguably the GOAT in Tom Brady. Tom Brady lost to Taylor Heineke. There would have been an issue. Especially with the Buccaneers having much more talent than the Washington football team do on the rest of the roster. It's not obviously just them facing head to head, but Tom Brady definitely had an advantage in terms of the roster around him. But you also it was a close game too. It was only 8 points. That's one score. That's a one possession game that you lost by, and the defense pretty much came in clutch. The offense was not able to get a touchdown to seal it late in the fourth quarter. They took a field goal with about just under 3 minutes left. The defense clutched up and held them, and stopped the Washington football team on that final drive where they're trying to where they had to get a touchdown to win. The defense clutched up and really kind of smothered them on that last drive. They only had 15 total yards on that drive in 6 plays, and it took up just under a minute of time on the clock. So that the defense were really well there. And I think that Buccaneers are getting way too much hype right now as a potential Super Bowl contender. I said it from the beginning. We said it in, I want to say Fantasy Frenzy. In our Fantasy Frenzy special, I talked about how I thought that, or it might have been before the episode before that. We talked about how I talked about how I thought that the Buccaneers were not a Super Bowl contender, but a solid playoff team. The Saints were my original Super Bowl pick. Saints over Chiefs in the Super Bowl was my original pick, and so I had the Buccaneers as a wild card. I think I probably had them as like the 6th or 7th wild card. So they performed a little over my expectations, but they're still just not a Super Bowl contender. They're just a solid playoff team. It's still what they are to me, and like I thought they would be all season long. And they won another close game to a not great team. They had a bunch of those all season long. They beat the Falcons by 4 points in Week 15. They beat the Vikings by 12 points in Week 14. They beat the Giants by 2 on Monday night in Week 8. They beat the Chargers by 7 in Week 4. Lots of games where they should be blowing them out, but they're almost losing those games, and that's just not promising for me, especially when you're going against a team like the Saints, who has dominated you all season long. They dominated. They beat you 34-23 in Week 1. It doesn't sound too bad. It's only 11 points, but then you go to their other game where they played them on Week 9. They dominated them 38-3. Like, this team just has the advantage over you right now. Ever since that game, the Saints dominated the Buccaneers, we could say, oh, but the Buccaneers have changed since then. They've changed since then. They're a much better team now. Their offense has finally clicked. AB is playing well. The defense is still really good. Yada, yada, yada. The Saints since then are 6-2. The Buccaneers since that game where they lost to the Saints in Week 9 are 5-2. They had one less game because their bye weekend there. The Saints did not have their bye week then. So, yes, the Buccaneers, you could argue, have gotten better. You could argue that. I still think that their peak was around when they beat the Packers. And they kind of fell after that, and then they kind of rose a little bit after the bye, but then again, they faced 4 non-playoff teams. But I still think that they haven't gotten any better than the Saints have been. The Saints have been really good. Their only losses in the stretch have been a close loss to the Chiefs. The Buccaneers also had one of those, and they had a close loss to the Eagles, which isn't that great. But the Buccaneers had a close loss to the Rams, which that's a respectable team. But I just don't know, man. I think Buccaneers are getting a lot more hype than what they're deserving of. When you almost lose to a team led by Taylor Heineke, and you have Tom Brady, I think that's a little bit of a problem, especially if you surround Tom Brady with supposedly all this talent. You should be blowing this team out. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they're just that type of team that doesn't really show up against the bad teams, but still shows up against the good teams. I'm excited for this matchup. The Saints versus Buccaneers. This honestly is probably, a dream matchup for the playoff. This is probably the best possible. This is probably the best matchup we're gonna get all. This might be the best matchup in terms of the teams in it. Maybe it might not be the best game, but in terms of the teams in the rosters they have now with Brady and versus Breeze, Buccaneers versus Saints. I think that this might be one of the best matchups we get all postseason long, and I'm super excited for this one. But right now, I think the Bucs are getting a little bit overhyped, but they're still a good team, definitely. And I'm not saying they have no shot against the Saints. Don't get me wrong, but they're getting just a tad bit overhyped.
Taylor Heineke just got himself a job next season. I mean, whether it's probably not going to be a starter or a backup, but he balled out. I mean, 360 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception doesn't sound great on paper, but if you watch the game, the dude was balling out. And, I mean, he was putting some respect on his name. I mean, there's that iconic video of Chase Young pointing at the back of his jersey with his name. I mean, this was just a fun game to watch. I mean, 31-23, yeah, you lost. I mean, you weren't favored going in. NFC East was terrible, NFC least. But Heineke, man, especially rushing, if you saw that diving pylon touchdown, that was crazy. I mean, that was an insane game. It was so much fun to watch. I mean, it wasn't anything special. Heineke, like I said, 360 yards and a touchdown interception, 46 yards rushing. Antonio Gibson had a pretty bad game for his standards, 31 yards total. McKissick had only 5 yards total, but he did have a touchdown. But like I said, this game was fun to watch. I mean, Washington is a bad team. Don't get me wrong; they're the best team in the NFC East. So I think we all know that. Cam Sims had 104 yards, McLaurin 75. So nothing too special about this team, especially on defense. One Chase Young only has 1 total tackle and 2 assisted, and I don't think he had a single QB hit. I think he only had around 2 QB pressures, and he has no sacks when he said, "I want Tom," and stuff like that. I think that's pretty embarrassing. I mean, a bad game for him, but this is going to be a start of something special. I mean, the team has got stuff to build on. If they can get a franchise QB, they've got someone like Terry McLaurin to throw the ball to, Antonio Gibson, who had a stellar season, he had around 800 yards, 11 touchdowns. I don't think he played every single game, too. So, pretty solid season out of him. And obviously, you've got probably the defensive rookie of the year in Chase Young. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with that award, but this was so exciting to watch. Bad game on defense, really, but Heineke put on a show. He pretty much got himself a job, and I think there's really nothing much to say about this football team. I think you covered the Buccaneers perfectly about the next matchup, but for the football team, that was fun to watch. I'm happy they got this far, and I'm happy they made it competitive for a little bit. And I'm happy Heineke was able to come out even when he didn't start in the XFL. He didn't get a single snap in the XFL. He didn't get drafted out of college. I think this was just super fun to watch.
All right, now time for Saints versus Bears. The Saints, my preseason Super Bowl pick, so I'm kind of rooting for them in the playoffs right now. But my midseason prediction was the Seahawks. I'm not going to talk about it. I talked about how I didn't go with my gut when I really should have. I really just kind of, I just didn't really go with my gut. I just didn't follow my gut there. I was like, but the Saints were, what were they around when we did our midseason predictions? They were, I want to say 5-2, 6-2 with that loss to the Raiders, and they almost lost to the Chargers, almost lost to the Panthers, almost lost to the Bears. I think it was around then where it was they were getting a lot of doubt. So I was I can't pick them again, And if I had to do it again, I did my playoff predictions. I still didn't predict them to win it all then, but I don't even know if I had the Saints going to the NFC Championship game in my midseason prediction. If I do now, because I think they can beat the Buccaneers. I did not have the Saints playing the Buccaneers in my predictions. I believe I had them playing the Seahawks, but I still saw them winning. I still think they're going to beat the Buccaneers, and you could say the same thing. I said it about the Buccaneers. So I think they won a close game to a team they definitely should have blown out. And the Saints won a close game to a team they definitely should have blown out. It's not that close, 21-9, but it's still 12 points. That's still but once again, you take out that garbage time touchdown, and it's 21-3. So that's why that's why I'm trying to say I guess you could argue that what I said about the Buccaneers could be true at the Saints. The thing is look, it should have been 21-3 just behind besides that garbage time touchdown by the Bears. Really the last play of the game. That's a definition of garbage time, I feel like. And then also this is how the Saints play. The Buccaneers, they have a strong offense, but they also are supposed to have a strong defense. Their defense did not show up against a bad offense in the football team. The Saints have a mediocre offense. I won't say me. I'd say they have a good offense. They have a good offense. Their offense played good against a good defense in the Bears. Yes, the Bears have a good defense. It's the strength of their team. They've been playing really well. They held the Jaguars to 17, held the Texans to 7. They held the Vikings to 19. They held the Titans to 24. They held the Saints to 26 early in the season. They held the Rams to 24. They have a good defense. They held the Colts to 19. They were losing a lot of these games. That's mainly because of their offense. The defense is good. And the Saints are led by their defense, which played phenomenal. Only allowed 3 points until, end the game, the last drive of the game, that went 99 yards. Do you think they were really trying their best to stop them there? No, they didn't care at that point. I kind of want to get a little bit of credit to Mitch Trubisky there, honestly, for going on the 99-yard drive, but the Saints defense, they weren't going all out. If it was 21 to 17, and they had to go 99 yards, I guarantee you there would have been a safety on the drive. That's what I would say. The defense, like I said, was playing great. The Saints made minimal errors to take away that one Taysom Hill fumble, and they played a pretty much perfect game in my opinion. So I think that they're definitely a contender. They're not up there with the Packers, Chiefs, and Bills, but they're the next team after them. I would say they're the next step down. Them with maybe the Ravens and maybe you can throw the Buccaneers in there too, as not a true contender, but maybe a dark horse. Solid playoff teams, dark horse teams. So yeah, that's where I think of them after this. And they did pretty well.
Speaking of teams that did pretty well, the opposite, the Bears, they did not show up to play. 9 points, like you said, that 99-yard drive, that garbage time drive. Like you said, the Saints really didn't care, so it should have been 21-3. Somehow Mitch Trubisky wins the Nickelodeon most valuable player, whatever. Personally, I don't see it. I think, it was fan vote, so definitely people were trolling because he only had 199 yards and a touchdown. So he would have ended the game with a lot less yards if it weren't for that drive. He had one touchdown. The rushing game was not there. Dave Montgomery only had 31 yards. And, the only touchdown they had was from Jimmy Graham on that last play. He only had 25 yards. Allen Robinson had the most yards with 55. This team did not show up. They did not. The defense didn't perform well because you let them drop 21 on your head, which isn't a lot, but you still lost. I'm sorry if I'm pausing because I can't think of much to say with this team. They're not a good team. They shouldn't have been in the playoffs. They barely sneaked in. This was bad for the Bears because now they might bring back Mitchell Trubisky. There most likely won't be any changes in the coaching staff because technically they made the playoffs. But the problem is quarterback and coaching. So this is bad for the Bears if they made the playoffs. You get a worse pick as well. Trubisky did not play well. Montgomery did not play well. No one in the receiving corps played well. Tayshaun Gibson did force a fumble that was recovered, but they couldn't really do anything with it because he lost 21-9. I can't say much about this Bears team because they're not good. They should not have been here. Even the Washington football team outperformed you. So, sorry, Bears fans. This is bad for you. Nothing is going to change, and it's only going to get worse, so I'm sorry. Hopefully you can get better, but not good for the Bears at all.
Next, we have the Titans Ravens at the Titans. Ravens took a dub 2013 for the Titans, and I was a Colts, and I don't like the Titans. So I really liked them losing this game. But I will say this. The Titans are a good team. They've got young players. Derrick Henry is, he's not old by any means. You can't call him old. He's only 27. Yes, running backs tend to age out of the league a little bit sooner, but Derrick Henry's still going strong, and there's no signs of him stopping really, unless you consider this game a sign that he's regressing. But it was one game, that followed a game where he went over 200 yards to get him a 2,000-yard rushing season. So he's still going to be good next year. AJ Brown is going to be really good next year. He's definitely a top 15 receiver in the league. John Smith, he's not the best tight end in the league, but he's definitely got potential. I think he showed flashes this season. He had 8 total touchdowns. He had 8 touchdowns as a receiver. So, that's pretty good. And he's only 25. He's 25 years old. He may get a little bit better next year. Since he got some reps this year with not really preseason stuff. So he really became the starter this year. And also, you got some young talented players in the defense, like Harold Landry, who developed a little bit this year. And you still have Kevin Byard, the leader on that defense, who's always going to be great, and he's not going to be aging anytime soon. Desmond King is a good corner, who I think they converted free safety, but I'm not sure. But yeah, you got a team that's it's gonna be good next year. You're probably gonna play playoff team again next year, but if you don't make improvements to the team, you're not gonna be a Super Bowl contender because teams are going to figure out how to stop Derrick Henry in the playoffs. Derrick Henry, yes, he can go for 2,000 yards. He can go for 200 yards on a team. Notice how most of 200-yard games are against the Jaguars and the Texans, though. That's important to note. Teams he plays twice a year with terrible run defenses. You're going to have good games against them. Obviously, 200 yards is still great, but you understand what I'm saying. It's not like he's going for 200 yards, against it's not like the teams he goes for 200 yards against most of the time are, teams with elite run defenses like the Colts or the Ravens, for example. And when you get shut down, the passing offense really shows because Ryan Tannehill can do great when Derrick Henry's rolling. He's an elite quarterback when Derrick Henry is rolling. You can roll him out with play action, teams feel the run, everything opens up for him. He's smart enough as a veteran to find those open guys. He's got enough arm strength. He's got the accuracy. The problem is when Derrick Henry is not rolling, when the defense is stopping him, that's when it becomes a problem and he can't perform. And that's where the problem lies for the Titans is that they rely on Henry too much on offense, and also defense is also atrocious. While it did play well against the Ravens, I will give them credit for that. It's still not great. It's got a lot of raw talent on it that doesn't really show up every week. So this was not a great loss for them. I think the Ravens they're not a bad team to lose to. This Ravens team has won 5 straight before and at the end of the regular season. And I believe the Chiefs last year started out 6-5, just as the Ravens did. Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying the Ravens won the Super Bowl, but you get what I'm saying. It's a good team. You don't have to be ashamed of losing to this team. But there's stuff you get to work on in the off season and for this off season and off season in the future. And you gotta be in win now because you're out. Who knows who the quarterback after Tannehill is gonna be. But Tannehill is window of elite performance, of at least performance good enough to be a contending team, to be on a contending team, is closing. He's 32, gonna be 33 in July. He's gonna be yeah, we'll see where this goes for the Titans this offseason and off seasons in the future.
Baltimore Ravens. Good game for them. You won by 7 points, 1 touchdown, not bad. Lamar Jackson did not throw a touchdown. He did throw 1 interception. He did throw for 180 yards, so not good by any means. But his rushing game was there. 136 yards and a touchdown. J.K. Dobbins had 34, I believe, 43, and 1 touchdown. Marquise Brown had 109 yards total, so pretty much the bulk of Lamar's yards. He had 70 other yards to go to players like Mark Andrews and Patrick Ricard. So, I wouldn't say the best game for Lamar. He had a phenomenal rushing game. It's just his passing. We call him a running back as a joke, but the thing is, if he can bring his passing game, if he can be MVP Lamar, this team is scary. But right now, he's not being MVP Lamar. He's being running back Lamar, and I don't think that's something that you can have. The defense played well. Marcus Peters had 1 interception. This isn't a phenomenal defense, but it's not a bad defense by any means. But I think it definitely could be better. Justin Tucker, for some reason, he's been missing kicks recently. He missed a kick, was 2 for 3. But pretty much overall, there's not much to say about this Ravens team. I mean, they've got a tough matchup coming up against the Bills. They could very well win this game, but the Bills are going to be scary. I mean, the Bills are one of the scariest teams. So it's going to be tough for the Ravens. Lamar's got to play like MVP Lamar. If Lamar can play like MVP Lamar, dare I say they could be Super Bowl contenders. Maybe not Super Bowl contenders, but if Lamar can be an MVP or can be MVP Lamar again in this postseason, it's going to be great. He's phenomenal running the ball, but he's just going to be able to pass the ball a little bit better because he's been struggling passing the ball this season. Defense got to step up a little bit. But other than that, I think it's good. I mean, this Titans team is pretty solid. This Bills team is definitely better than this Titans team, but some people say the Titans are better than the Colts, and the Colts almost beat the Bills, so you never know what can happen. I have faith that the Ravens will put up a fight, maybe not win, but it's going to be competitive, and I think it's going to be a great game, Bills versus Ravens.
And finally, we have the Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Browns took the W in a 40-37 win in Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point really just become the joke of the league. The Browns were that joke of the league. They were mocked every season for the last 2 decades, and now the Steelers are the team getting mocked mainly because not because they're a bad team. And they went 12-4, but they did finish the season 1-5, including that playoff loss. But also the fact that just the culture is terrible there, and this team will be pretty bad soon. Like they have some young talent. Juju's young. He's talented. I don't know if Juju's really going to get anywhere in his career in terms of like becoming a star. He's young. Chase Claypool's young. T.J. Watt is young. Minka Fitzpatrick's young. Devin Bush is young. But most of their like leaders on their team, I would say, besides Minka and Devin Bush and T.J. Watt, those defensive young players, I think the defense will be great for years to come. They do have some aging guys who are going to be gone soon, like Cam Hayward and Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson. But they do have those young guys, and they also have like guys like Stephon Tuitt. And but on the offensive side, you have Big Ben's going to retire soon, and your offense already is bad enough, and it's only going to get worse because your offensive line is all old. So it's like they're in a tough situation here, especially because of the culture they have there right now at this moment. The fact that Juju dancing on logos, even after he stops, he trash talks the Browns for the game. Then they get blown out, and then Chase Claypool, the rookie, may I add, who has not proved anything yet. He had a few good games. But if you take out his few good games here and there, he really wasn't like a huge factor like in the passing game. I mean, he had a decent season, 873 yards and 9 touchdowns. But I mean, really, you take out some of his just big explosive games, and that number goes down to about 500 yards and 4 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns. So I mean, and as a rookie, and then you say after you just got blown out by this team, it was technically only its 11-point loss, but you had garbage time touchdown at the end of the game. So, and this was a blowout. You can't deny it. You say, "Oh, the Browns are going to get clapped next week." First of all, as a rookie. Second of all, after getting blown out by that team, no one can say that. And Juju touched on them before the game. And also, they brought in Eric Ebron, who was a problem on the Colts. That's why they let him go. Who's hasn't had a good season. He's a draft bust. He hasn't had a good season ever, except for one season when he was with Andrew Luck, and it's Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's a beast. And he hasn't had a good season. Being drafted in the first round, not having many good seasons except for that one season with Luck. And to be one of those guys who just it's mainly the offense. The defensive guys, I respect their defense a lot, but their offensive guys and the culture on that offense side of the ball just really lost my respect, and how they just don't show up in games when they do all this trash talk and gloating and all this stuff. The defense, if the defense was the one trash talking, they show up most weeks. They didn't really show up last week, but most weeks they do. They are a really good defense. The offense did not show up after and even after you don't show up, just continue to trash talk a team that just blew you out and absolutely shut you down. There's a major problem with that. And you can tell, I think some of the veterans on the offense side are fed up with it. Big Ben, some of the offensive linemen like Mike Pouncey. I guarantee these guys are fed up with what the young guys are doing in their TikTok dances and their trash talk, and it's just like, I mean, I feel like it's a big problem with the Colts they've established, and they're really becoming the joke of the league now, and it's really sad to see a historical franchise that has had great historical success and always been one of like the household names in terms of you think of the NFL history. The Steelers come to mind. Steelers, Cowboys, Patriots, Niners, like those teams. They're one of those teams, but they're soon going to be one of those teams that's thrown into the conversation with like the Browns and the Lions. They're always, they're just the joke of the league. That's what they are right now. It's really sad to see.
I mean, the Browns just had their first playoff win. I mean, since most of their players are born. I mean, Baker was not even born. I can't remember exactly. My apologies, but Baker was not born when they won their last playoff game, and they won this one, I'd say, in dominant fashion. That phenomenal first quarter was 20-plus points. They forced so many turnovers. I mean, the first fumble didn't really count, but Big Ben ended up throwing, I think it was 4 interceptions, and I think 3 in the first quarter. It was insane. Baker had a good game, 263 yards, 3 touchdowns, proving the haters wrong just a little bit, especially at the end with that clap at the Steelers saying the Browns is the Browns, because, Browns is the Browns, as Juju wanted to say, but the Browns came out and they balled out. Baker balled out. Nick Chubb balled out. The whole team just decided that they were going to will their way to this win. I mean, they're 11-5. Steelers only 12-4, so there wasn't much of a difference, but people like to write off the Browns just because it's Cleveland and they're historically a bad team. But the Browns are looking good. I mean, they're going against the Chiefs next game. I don't think they can beat the Chiefs exactly, but if Baker can put up another good game like this, 3 touchdowns, no interception, he was averaging 7.7 yards per attempt, which is pretty good. Nick Chubb had 76 yards and 4.2 yards per carry, and Kareem Hunt was also playing well with 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this team can be scary. The defense isn't the best. Obviously, they're an offensive-minded team. I mean, they've got great receiver in Jarvis Landry. They are missing OBJ, but they can still make it work, especially with the running game. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and if Baker can keep playing like this, they're going to be good. They're going to be a scary team in the years to come if they can get even better. But it's going to be a tough matchup for them this week. But this week was definitely amazing for them. He came out and beat, mid-season Super Bowl favorites probably, the Steelers, undefeated team. Amidst all the trash talk, you came out, you beat them, you clapped back a little bit, and it feels good for the entire league to see the Browns win this, and even better to see them beating the Steelers, especially after comments made by 2 young wide receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. So I think this is great. They might get clapped next week, like Claypool said, but who cares? They made it farther than you. This doesn't mean that they're a better team, but they're better than you. I mean, you just got to swallow your pride. You got to accept the loss. I mean, you can't really be talking when you had only 59 yards. Well, you did have 2 touchdowns, but you still lost to the Browns by a lot. You lost 48-37. You have one of the biggest breakdowns in the first quarter I think we've ever seen in NFL history, probably. I mean, they dropped 28 on you in the first quarter, 28-0. You outscored them every single quarter after that, but it didn't matter. They were still able to win. So, I mean, I don't think the Steelers should be talking right now. You've lost. It's over. You're out of the playoffs. You've got next season. But you're going to need to find yourself a quarterback, and you're going to need to find yourself some respect towards other teams, probably, because you can't be trash talking, especially after you lost. You can't be trash talking like that before games. You can't be doing TikTok dances on people's logos. You can't be doing that, because I know that's your persona. And, even when you're hated, you're so popular. I mean, that's kind of Juju's and Chase Claypool's personas at the moment, but no one's going to respect you. You kind of just clowned. You kind of ruined the Steelers, one of the most historic franchises of all time, one of the most successful franchises of all time. You kind of ruined Big Ben's and Pouncey's probably their last season. I mean, it's just embarrassing for the Steelers, and it's great for the Browns because the Browns were able to come out and win this game. First playoff win in a while. I think it's great for Browns fans. They've been waiting for this forever. I think it's good for Baker. He may not be the best, but he proved the haters wrong, showing that he can win a playoff game and that he can be, pretty good. He had a 115 passer rating. So this is great for the Browns overall. It was a very exciting game. It was very fun to watch, and I'm happy the Browns were able to get their playoff win.
So that's going to wrap it up for NFL Super Wildcard Weekend review. We'll be back at it again with a division round review, and we will also probably have a normal episode coming out where we cover news across the other sports leagues like NBA, college basketball, college football. There's some news in the NBA today, some news in college football yesterday with the national championship happening. So we'll definitely probably get one out over the weekend, hopefully. We'll see you on that one. We'll try our best, but we'll see you in the next episode, whenever that may be.